I'm sure
Welcome.
Russ can write this out.
That's right. That's right. Welcome, everyone, to Junior Achievement of Southern Colorado's launch lesson featuring our Spirit of Entrepreneurship Award winners, Russ Ware and Yemi Mobolade. They have some students here today who will be listening in and offering their questions to the launch lesson as well. But we are looking forward to hearing their story of entrepreneurship and learning more about their journey. These two gentlemen are the co-founders of the Wild Goose Meeting House, the Good Neighbors Meeting House, and the Wild Goose Management Group, which we need to know a lot more about. And we also need to know how you came up with the name Wild Goose. It's one of the things that's been on my mind quite a bit. So they are business partners. They were selected as laureates in the Junior Achievement Spirit of Entrepreneurship Awards this year. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you for all you do in our community. And I'd love if you could introduce yourselves. And Yemi, let's start with you. If you could just introduce yourself to the students and tell us a little bit more about your background and your partnership with Russ.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Angie, thank you to you and Lauren and the rest of the team, the Board of Directors of Junior Achievement, Southern Colorado, for this incredible honor and recognition. Certainly, Russ and I love the city. We do this out of a place of just deep care for the things happening in Colorado Springs. And the recognition is nice. So thank you. And it's good to see all the students that are tuning in. My name is Yemi Mobolade. I am actually a Nigerian immigrant. I moved to the U.S. about 23, almost 24 years ago as a college student. Fell in love with the country, and have had the blessing of being in the U.S. and became a citizen about 2-3 years ago. So I'm also a new American. I've lived in Colorado Springs 9 years. Russ and I have been in business 8 years now. It's been a great ride and a great journey. I like to say, Russ and my partnership is like we're similar, but we're also different. It's like we're in a marriage, almost like an arranged marriage, because a couple of mutual friends introduced us together, and I'm glad we met, because our business, neither one of our businesses would be alive today without our meeting. We met, and I kid you not, I believe 7 months later, the Wild Goose was born. And we can talk a little bit more about that later. I'll hand it to Russ to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Russ, and I agree with everything Yemi said about just thanks and gratitude for everything this program is doing, and certainly for just the honor that you guys have given us. I'm also an immigrant from Texas, and I've been here. I was born and raised in the Dallas area, and I've spent a lot of time over the years in Colorado, but I've been a permanent citizen of Colorado for about 12 years, and really glad to be here. And having grown up in all kidding aside, just a different city in a different area of the country, my appreciation for this city is really strong. This feels like home to me. It felt like Colorado Springs felt like my all-time home for almost within months of being here. And it's hard to describe. I'm not exactly sure all the reasons why, but this city is just, I think, where I was always meant to be. And so it was easy to want to really dive in and focus my heart and my brain and all the things that I can bring to the table, such as they are, to this city and making this community all that it can be with what I have to offer. And I know Yemi feels the same way. And we both believe that you do your greatest work in collaboration, and with partners and friends and like-minded folks, where, as Yemi said, you need those differences to bring all the pieces to the table, but then obviously you need that affinity. You need those things that you share in terms of values and passions and goals. And so when you can align values and passions and goals with a diversity of strengths and talents and resources, I think that's a real winning combination. I think that's really a lot of the heart of Yemi and I's success as partners, are that both of those things are true. So really glad to be here. Thank you all.
We're thrilled you're here. So Yemi said you meet, and then in 6 months you have built a business idea, right? Where did the big idea come from? How was it generated? If you have two like-minded people who also bring diversity to the table, diversity of thought, diversity of intellect, different skills and talents, how do you finally decide? Finally, I mean, 6 months was quick too, right? But how did this dream come about? What was the big idea?
It's exactly what Russ said. It's a diversity of talent, thought. But how do you get a Nigerian immigrant and a Texas immigrant both in Colorado Springs trying to pursue a cafe? I would say is so Russ was actually further ahead in the plans for the Wild Goose when we actually met. I did not know Russ, actually. A couple of people that I knew who also knew him, whether that said, "Oh my goodness, Yemi, everything you're planning to do, all your business ideas, there's this guy named Russ who's doing it." I've always, I always believe we're better together. I just think it's each one of us, and to all the students, just understanding that. Not only valuing similarities, but valuing differences, because none of us were born with every single ability and every single talent. We need each other. Even sometimes the things that drive you crazy in somebody else's, this might be the very thing that you need. And certainly Russ and I are learning that and appreciating that in each other. But so a couple of friends said, "You got to meet this guy." And I was in a meeting at a cafe, funny enough, and Russ was also meeting at the same cafe, and I was walking out with a friend, and the guy who was meeting with also was a friend of mine, and he said, "Here's a guy I said you need to meet." And so we met briefly. We connected later that week. My wife encouraged me to reach out to him because she knew I wanted to do this idea, this business, and partnership. And this idea is really a cafe. The technical name, sometimes it's called third space, where your first space is your home, your second space is your traditional work environment, and your third places and spaces in the community are your neighborhood hangouts, cafes, bars, barbershops, where the community comes together and where community and that magic happens. And when that magic happens in this space, a lot of times those spaces are where innovative conversation happens, creative conversation, ideas at birth. Things just happen in this space. And this is the type of space I really wanted to pursue. And Russ was right there. And so we already had that same like-minded vision. And we both have a love for Colorado Springs that probably is unexplainable. And I like to say, at the time, 10 years ago, I was saying, I love Colorado Springs for what it is. I also love Colorado Springs for what it could become. And so we feel as though that while we love the Springs for what it is, we feel as we're change agents. We also want to help the city evolve to what it could become. And this space would help it. And so when Russ and I first had that initial encounter, I believe it was supposed to be an hour meeting. And I remember we just ended up talking for 3-4 hours. And we realized, okay, we have something there. And so that meeting was an uncovering of similarities and like-minded vision. And so that helped accelerate the process because we both knew exactly where we were going. And Russ had already done a lot of work and put a lot of the ideas on paper.
I love that. And there's some humility in that, because when you have an idea and someone says, "Hey, there's someone working on this," you really have to say, "I'm willing to partner. I'm willing to listen to these ideas. I'm willing to understand what this person might have that could make my idea better." And I think that's really important to understand. There's a joke that there are so many nonprofits, and there are people who will say there are just way too many nonprofits, so I'm going to start my own, right? You know, so the idea of collaborating and partnership just isn't there off the top. But for you two, in order to just find that synergy and be willing to say, I'd like to learn from what you're doing, and be willing to have that meeting and have that conversation, I think is important. And I think it's important for students to understand that we need to partner and collaborate to bring the best of what each of us brings to the table.
And I want to add that really set the culture and for Russ and my working relationship. It's interesting you mentioned that, because we have a working relationship where we allow each other to take the lead.
Mm.
You know, it's okay. This is already in motion. Go for it. I'm gonna humble myself and follow. And we've had that interchange. Oh, you have a gift of this. I'm gonna humble myself and follow. So that initial encounter has really set the tone and the culture for Russ and my partnership.
It's a great point, and the foundation of any partnership, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to tell us how you got the name Wild Goose? How quick did that come around?
I'll let Russ take that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Everybody wants to make some kind of deeper meaning out of the name than it probably is really there. But as far as the Wild Goose portion of it goes, I was actually one summer before we opened, going to a festival called the Wild Goose Festival, which is a festival of arts and spirituality. It's sort of based on another festival that's over in Ireland, but they were for a little. I guess it's still going on, but they were doing some in the States, and so that was in my brain. But I think even aside from that, I was sort of thinking about how in like the Lord of the Rings and the J.R.R. Tolkien writings and this sort of old world pub, all these old pubs and meeting spaces oftentimes had an animal name. You know, in the Lord of the Rings, you have the Prancing Pony, which is one of the pubs where there's a meeting, and the Green Dragon and things like that. And I thought, I want that sort of old world idea where people gather in, you know, sort of this town square idea. And so I wanted an animal, and the Wild Goose sort of became the animal in my mind at some point, because I thought it was kind of whimsical and fun. It almost had a silliness to it, but not necessarily, and a wildness to it, of course. And then we were looking for, and certainly in my brain, I wanted that idea of that town square meeting place, like a pub. And the word pub is short for public house, which again, historically is that type of space. But one of the problems in our culture here in America is that pub has just become another name for bar, you know, and it doesn't quite have that same sense of, no, this is where we gather together, at the barber shop, or at the public house, or at the meeting house. And you know, it just occurred to me, oh, that's it. We can better define this by saying meeting house than using the word pub. And that was a better descriptor. So that what I guess originally was more of an adjective to describe what we're doing, at some point in my mind or in our discussions, I'm not exactly sure how the evolution went, it became officially part of the title. So it became the Wild Goose Meeting House. And then, you know, I don't think either of us had this in our minds. In fact, I know we didn't, because when we started the Goose, we had no strategic plan for, are there going to be other ones of these? Are we going to do anything more than this? We just wanted this thing to be successful, and we wanted it to be a community builder. So later, when the opportunity came to do another cafe, and we knew we didn't want to just duplicate the Goose, we knew we didn't want this to be some kind of little chain or franchise. We wanted each, if we were going to do something different or something else, we wanted it to be distinct and right for its context. And so when the opportunity to start Good Neighbors came, then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Okay, this is not the Wild Goose, this is Good Neighbors, but it's still a meeting house. And so the meeting house name sort of became the foundation or the overarching idea and value for what we do. And Yemi and I both, we've talked about this, other business opportunities for us to be involved with in any way, all the way from consulting to contract work or whatever it might be. We may both find ourselves, in fact, we have, involved in some other things. But when an opportunity comes in front of us to do something like this again, to do another meeting house, that's where we know, okay, that's probably a Russ and Yemi thing. And there are some things out there that might be one or the other of us, but this is what Russ and Yemi do. We build these kinds of places. So there you go. I don't know if Yemi wants to add anything to that, but
that's well said. The only thing I want to add is, you know, as we were thinking through the name, the Wild Goose, I'm also reminded. I don't know if Russ remembers this, but there was a show around that time that came out. It's called Portlandia, and there was an episode that's called "Put a Bird on It," and where at the time, you know, Portland. So the show makes fun of the culture of Portland, and what putting a bird on totes of bags or on a cafe name just meant, you know, making it cool. It meant enhancing it. And part of our desire too was to make the city cool, because there weren't a whole lot of cafes like ours at the same time. And Russ and I were trying to create the type of place we would go to. We didn't want to leave Colorado Springs and go to Denver and Boulder. We wanted to create that type of place in Colorado Springs. And so that bird at the time too was also just symbolized making it cool, because putting a bird on things in hipster communities were really cool. So that's our bird.
We definitely put a bird on it. And I had forgotten about that. The first season of Portlandia was in sync with the formation of the goose. That was
it really was.
So the dream of the 90s was alive in not just Portland, but Colorado Springs.
That is perfect, and put a bird on it. So, you know, with Junior Achievement, we also like to help prepare. You know, you've talked about a big idea, a big dream, a third space, a meeting house. And Russ, I love how you say, oh, there's not really a story behind our name. And then you proceeded to tell this great story behind the name. So it's great. And it's so well thought out. And then of course you get a little bit into sales and marketing when you say, we don't know, but we know it needs to have a bird on it, because that's cool. And that's hipster like. And so let's talk about your customers and your value proposition first. So when you thought about who was coming? Who were you trying to attract, and how did you know that if you built it, they would come?
I'll kick this one off. I think, you know, I think Yemi hinted at this just a moment ago. We wanted to create a place that was the kind of space that we would want to go to. And perhaps this is a little bit naive and even, I dare say, a touch arrogant, but we just believed that if we built a place we would want to go to, that we probably weren't the only ones that were looking for something like this. And so I want to say that we didn't do as much in-depth demographic study or research as we could have, but we had a very, very good sense of a little bit of a gap in what this city needed, and this goes back to what Yemi said earlier. I think both of us early on, I think it's fair to say, we fell in love with this city, but very much in the core of that passion for this city was a very early sense of the potential of this community. I think as business people, as entrepreneurs, as visionaries, what intrigued us most was discovering the potential that this place had. We looked at the downtown and where it was 10 years ago and said, wow, there is so much that could happen here, that needs to happen here. And there was just this sense that it could. And we were asking ourselves, why not? And so we began to do it. So I think we believed in our heart, sort of a gut thing, that the people were there, those customers were there. But I do remember when we first opened up, and it took a while for the morning crowd to develop. And this is true, generally speaking, in the coffee industry. Your morning, if you're an all-day place, that morning coffee dynamic takes a longer time to build than, say, if you're like us, where you're doing food and a bar, if you will. We started out with just local beer and wine, but if you having that evening component and the morning component, it's the morning one that takes the longest time, because people have their morning routines. They have their regular coffee shops. It takes them longer to get to that place of trying something new in the morning. So it took us months before the morning crowd started to really develop. But that evening crowd, that nighttime hangout, gather together thing in the evening exploded. I mean, it just exploded out of the gate. In fact, we had some soft opening evenings where we didn't have half the stuff we were going to have. We were just barely ready, and we weren't even officially open, but we let people come in, and the place was packed, like multiple nights. And it wasn't even some big advertised thing. It was just sort of organically letting people know that, hey, we're going to open the doors, even though we haven't really had our grand opening yet. And I remember us thinking, like, where are these people coming from? Like we knew the potential was there. What we didn't understand was that it was like ready right that minute, like for the minute we opened that door for that. Yeah. And that downtown community. I remember looking out at a packed house in the first couple of weeks and seeing all these young couples with a baby or a 2-year-old with their craft beer and their whatever. And I thought, this is the future. You know, we didn't need another tavern downtown. We didn't need another place for just adults to go. We needed a place for these young, sharp, creative families that are moving downtown to come and bring their kids and feel comfortable with it while they drink a beer from Pikes Peak and listen to great music and just have a good discussion. So we thought it was there. We had a hunch it was there, and it was there.
Let's talk about the location. So strategically, you know, the market and the location and the reason for putting the Goose where it's at. Did you have the space picked out first, or did you try to find a space that was downtown?
Russ, can you speak more into that?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I think we both felt like that downtown was the place to do the kind of thing that we wanted to do. The specific space on this corner had been sitting vacant for a while. And so when the business plan began to develop, in fact, but by the time Yemi and I met, and as he said, I had some things on paper already, I had targeted this space as ideal. And even the architecture work, very preliminary, but Ryan Lloyd, who did the initial architecture, had based it on this space with the idea that, you know, if we ended up somewhere else, the values of that design would carry over. But you have to build the design around something. So we built it around this. And we really felt like the corner was ideal. Downtown was imperative. In fact, I remember we went through a little bit of a death of the vision where we got in a certain amount of time, and then we thought we weren't going to get the space after all. The landlord suddenly seemed disinterested in us, and we began to look at other options, but we didn't look at any other option that wasn't downtown. So we felt like if it wasn't this corner, it needed to be somewhere downtown. And then thankfully we ended up back at this corner after all. And it has indeed turned out to be, I can't even imagine the Goose being anywhere else but this corner. You know, this is our corner.
And the corner, it's so pivotal because you have that indoor-outdoor space. So you have that opportunity to have that outdoor space right there on the corner. I mean, it's just such a great gathering place, because even if you were walking down the street, you know, you would see the folks all sitting there on the corner and then just kind of gravitate toward there. So great work sticking to that. How about capital? So when a student is thinking, I want to start a business someday, I want to open a cafe, I have an idea for a really cool place, I have an idea for what the community needs, I care about Colorado Springs. How do they fund it? How did you fund this particular project? How'd you do it?
It's all about money. the beauty is there is no one way. There's so many different ways to fund a business. From it's never too early to start saving. I know young people that have saved up money and bootstrap to start the business. Bootstrapping just means doing it as minimal, as feasible as with the money, limited amount of resources you have, and build over time. You can certainly go that route. You can also go the route of that Russ and I went, is reaching out to close friends and family members. But that route probably wouldn't have worked if we didn't build enough trust. I think we've built enough trust with our family members and close friends that they were willing to take a chance on us, because nobody knew who we were in Colorado Springs. We were still fairly new in the Springs, and there was no way that we could have gotten money from, which is another route you can go, is traditional investors, folks who are willing to give you the money for an interest or equity in the business. Sometimes you find angel investors who are different than the traditional investors, who they like you, or they also have a common vision of building a community like you do, and they're willing to give you a chance. There's that type of investment. I mean, capital, you can also borrow money from a lending source, including a bank, which typically that tends to be a common route, but that also requires that you have some kind of collateral, or you have enough collateral. Just means that you have some kind of asset that they can depend on for some kind of security. If for some reason your business doesn't work out, the lending institution needs some kind of security, and you're given, whether it's a car or your house or one of those. So there are different types of lending sources. I would encourage, if you are thinking about it, it's not too early to start saving for that. We, friends and family, and my wife and I also invested our own money into the business, so money that we had saved up. So, but Russ and I were very lucky to have built trust with family and close friends, which is hard to do. Sometimes that's one of the most risky, because lending money from your family can, from a sibling or parent, sometimes the relationship is multi-layered and can be tricky too. But I would say that's how we went about ours. For the Wild Goose, for Good Neighbors, actually complete very different investment opportunity. Now that Russ and I have developed some reputation in the community, we have that's my daughter in the background playing. We have local investors, people with money who are willing to take a chance on us to invest in the business. And that's what we did with Good Neighbors. The magic about Good Neighbors is it lives up to its name. Russ and I live in the neighborhood, so we are neighbors. We live blocks away from that business. That cafe is tucked in the neighborhood, in the Patty Jewett Old North End neighborhood. But the investment for that business also comes from 3 different neighbors. And they get a percentage of interest in addition to the capital invested, as well as some equity in the business as well.
So by investing in you all and in a vision that you had, and I love Good Neighbors because that's perfect. That's the perfect name for this, which is a group of neighbors, a group of good neighbors who've come together. But by investing, you're also providing a business opportunity for those who are willing to create those partnerships and invest. So exactly. Supporting economic development even further than your own interests as well, and further supporting the community.
Exactly.
That's really powerful. How about expectations? So we've talked about your big idea. We talked about your dreams. We've talked about how you marketed this, how you decided where it would go. You even built on it. Was there any part of this that didn't meet your expectations along the way and in this journey?
I would say that I think we should both answer this question, and it might be the same answer. I think I think in terms of the impact on the community, in terms of the way that we, especially with with Wild Goose, but now in a different way, really with Good Neighbors too, I think we have been really overwhelmed and extremely just thankful, gratified, humbled by the important role that each of our businesses has gotten to play in the development of this city and this downtown community. And really both, even Good Neighbors is a part of downtown development, because it is the part of the bedroom, it is part of downtown's bedroom is the Patty Jewett area. And so it really is a lot of the same people, a lot of the same community. And I think that exceeded our expectations. I think we thought it would be positive. We thought it would be a good thing for the community. But I think we've been just blown away by what that's meant. And it's given Yemi and I both, it's opened doors for us to have an opportunity to have more influence and get more involved in the city and different things. Yemi, obviously, in his role with the mayor's office, but with committees that we're on, task force, steering committees, boards, we get to be very involved, and we really enjoy that. I think that was a little bit of a surprise. It was to me. I was just thinking I'm going to run a business. I think if there's anything that's been a disappointment might not be the best word, but but I think the biggest challenge is we're not taking wheelbarrows of money to the bank, meaning this cafe model, this thing we're doing it's not like running a big full-blown bar that's open till 2 a.m. every morning. It's not like, running a 4,000 square foot restaurant that's full every time with big dinner service. Our emphasis on community and gathering people together and letting people come and drink a cup of coffee and sit there on their computer for a while and let them do that, because it's part of our ethos. I think that would be something that would be really cool to do all the great things we're doing, and also have wider margins would be great. That's mine. Not because I'm greedy, but because I want to do more stuff. And it takes money to do stuff. So Yemi, I don't know if you want to add into that or chime in.
No, to pick up from where Russ left is, money has never been a primary motivation for us. Making tons of money. We want to make enough that our family survives. We want to make enough that we can provide jobs for others. We want to make enough to enhance this community. In fact, an earlier question you asked, Angie, about a value proposition, should mention that our mission is that we create community over good food and beverages. So ultimately, creating community is our social impact. And that gives us the ultimate satisfaction. That helps us go to bed at night. It helps us get up in the morning, and it helps us kick ass during the day. I mean, it's really what fuels us. And I would say, in terms of expectation, that has exceeded our expectation. We had an idea. We had an inclination it would go well. We didn't realize that creating community, both within the spaces itself and the larger influence outside the spaces, we didn't realize that would go so well. I would say that Russ and I wouldn't have had that planned. That was not in our business plan. Make no mistake about it. We work hard. Those early days, we were working 80 to 120 hours a week, there all the time, day and night. It's not so much the case now. We have an incredible team of people around us. But I don't know, I would say maybe that's an expectation I wasn't expecting initially. But that's just part of working hard. And when you do something you love, it gets tiring, but it's also rewarding. And beyond, most of all, I think that this whole thing has exceeded our expectation and created so many opportunities for us. I would end this portion with this story. I was about a year into the Wild Goose opening. The Downtown Partnership, which is an organization that oversees and cares for all the activities happening in the downtown corridor. Russ and I were new to the organization. We were invited to one of the meetings, and I remember Russ and I walking. It was in the Pioneers Museum, one of the meeting areas, the director Susan introduced us, and Russ and I walked in, and the whole place just erupted into applause and screams, and we looked at each other like, what in the world? What just happened? We had no idea the impact 80 to 120 hours a week made to the downtown community. We didn't realize that we really helped start a movement. You know, the partnership calls us a downtown original. You know, they credit us for help for kind of getting the whole, you know, downtown renaissance kicked off. We just didn't realize the bigger impact of this almost ignorant, we're going to do this. We have no idea. Folks are, you know, it's towards the tail end of the recession. We heard, we're not quite sure this will work. We're like, well, we're going to do it anyway. It's needed. We want to help build this community. And so that's beyond not making a ton of money. That's been that's given us a lot of gratitude to the impact we've made in this community. And that, you know, if for some reason, you know, I die tonight, I feel like I've really made a difference in this community. Which, by the way, if you read the historic origins of business, there was a very social impact connection to it. You started businesses to help move the society forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is very powerful. Starting businesses to help move society forward, and so clear in the work that you all have done. Well, I would love to know if there are any students who might want to unmute themselves at this point. If you've thought of any questions that you might have, and if there are any students who might want to unmute themselves and ask a question. Anybody with a question out there? And do not.
I have a question.
Great.
So I didn't say this earlier, but I'm also Gina Turner's daughter. But I was just wondering, like, what made you guys choose to be like entrepreneurs? Like, and like, when did you decide this? Like, that's like being an entrepreneur, like, obviously has its risks in it. And like, when it succeeds, like as successful as you guys, it's awesome. So like, what made you guys just decide to do that?
I think it's that the answer to that question is different for every person and where you are in your stage in life. And I think some people, thinking about you guys who are all young and early in your journey of all of this, there's some people that come right out of the gate and they know that's what they are. They're entrepreneurs. They're wired to go start things. And it took me a lot of years to get to that place. But for whatever reason, about 10 years ago, or, maybe a little bit less than that, but not much, I began to realize that all through my life and career as an adult, I'd always been sort of a creative, visionary person, even in the jobs that I was in. And it just felt like now was the time, with some other transition going on in my life, to, in terms of career, to really, this is the time to give it a try. That the way that I could most maximize some of the ways that I was wired and gifted would be to really see if I could bring something to life, not by myself, but in a different sort of way than just attaching myself, just having a job with somebody, but to actually create something new. And for me, I was already in my early 40s when that happened. And so it looks different from everybody. Yemi probably has a slightly different answer to that.
No, actually, very similar answer to Russ, but different story. I was in my early 30s, but Russ said something that was really key that's probably common to both of our story, is transition. Transition just seemed like a great opportunity to try out this thing called entrepreneurship and take risk. Like Russ, all the jobs I've held, I felt like I was very creative, always starting new ideas. I felt like I had some leadership in me. So I had some inclinations I did not know. But a friend gave me a really good advice that actually ultimately led me to move into Colorado Springs, because I had a great community in the Midwest. I was living in South Bend, Indiana, and I was fortunate to have a lot of social capital there to certainly get another job if I wanted to. But this friend told me, she said, Yemi, here's the thing. If you've always had this inclination to move out west, to go to Colorado, to go to California, to start something new, do it. You can always fall back on a regular job. In fact, you're going to learn skills that will make you a better employee. But you don't want to live your life not knowing that you've not tried.
Right.
That was incredible advice. I'm like, okay, I can always fall back, and I'm going to fall back with more skills than I had previously. But I'm going to give this a shot. And that's what tipped me over the edge, and being able to actually leave a community that that I actually also equally loved. I didn't know I would love a new community even more. I mean, my best friend was my neighbor. He was my roommate, then bought a house 2 houses from me, and I left all of that to move out to Colorado Springs eventually. And so, yeah, but it was transition. It was an opportunity to try. And if it didn't work, it would also be not failure. But you remember that there's failure, but there's no such thing as failure. They show that some of the best workforce, people who are best in the workforce have been entrepreneurs, because you learn a lot of other skills that you can always take back to get a regular job.
Those are really strong words, and that's really strong advice. And number one, it's just be brave, try it, be willing to have those people who can support you and say, give it a go, give it a shot. And of course, those who are also there to say, give it a shot, but consider this while you give it a shot. And then about falling back. If you fall back with more skills than you had than when you started. And I think that's really powerful for every step we take, right? Every step further we take, if we fall back a little bit, we learn something as we tried to climb those steps, as we tried to get up that hill. So those are really strong words. Any other questions? Anybody else think of something that they'd like to ask? Might have time for one more student to ask a question if there's anybody else that might have one.
I have a question. Do you guys have any future plans for something else that you have been wanting to do in addition to what you already have?
Russ, do you have any future plans?
Always. I think, what's interesting, this is such a great question, because this is one where I think there is a little bit of a different answer for Yemi and I that again, has the same passion at the core, but who we are makes it express itself in slightly different ways. Whereas, Yemi has gone a certain direction in his involvement with the city and development, from the same core passions that I have. That's the direction he's gone, and I'll let him maybe say a few words about that. For me, my thing is, it really is that creation, that building, that plastering paper all over the wall with flowcharts of ideas and how something should look and what it should be named. That's my deal. So for me, the next thing is always, what's somebody doing over here that I can help with? I do some consulting with other business startups, especially younger folks. There are opportunities that come across all the time. And what I tell people, I just had a conversation yesterday, because some people will approach me about, hey, we've got this building, do you want to do something in it? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure it's the right time to start a whole brand new business. But if you find some people that want to do something there and they're looking for what I have to offer, I'll be a consultant, I'll be a contract person, I'll be a friend to have drinks with once a week and bounce things off of. I'll be a partner that can help, part of a team. I really don't care what it looks like. I just want to be a part of creating new things. So are there going to be some new businesses in the next, let's say, 5 years that I've got my hands on? Probably. I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen. Will there be another Russ and Yemi collaboration, another Meetinghouse pop up somewhere in the next 5 years? I think that's fairly likely, but we'll see. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, but we'll see. And then Yemi, I know, has his version of new things that might happen over the next 5 years. So I'll give that to him.
No, Russ, that was actually well said. I think at the heart of who Russ and I are, as we realize that we're entrepreneurs, not because we were 18, 19, 20, 21, even 30, realizing that we're going to be entrepreneurs someday. I think we stumbled upon it, but I'm also realizing that there's an entrepreneurial spirit in all of us. So in many ways, we're all entrepreneurs. So do we have plans to do something? Yes. We don't know what that is. We don't know if it's going to be another meeting house, if it's going to be a complete different concept, if it's going to be with each other, if it's going to be with each other and two other people, if it's going to be Russ doing something else with somebody else and me doing something else with somebody else, and then it kind of folds together. But I think we realize we have that entrepreneurial spirit. We're always going to be making something of this community, bottom line. So Russ and I have had a couple of businesses together. I've had the opportunity to co-found a nonprofit with some other folks called COSILoveYou. We're always going to be attached to moving this community forward and leveraging this original idea that we want to make this community better, and we're going to do it through cafes and other types of ideas and work to keep moving this community forward. I think the mission of who we are is the same. We're creating community, and that's what we're going to keep doing. So yes, we're going to keep doing something. What that looks like, it's yet to be discovered. But we for sure discovered something about who we are in the process, which, by the way, is really, really important as you guys take any kind of risk, whether it's leaving Colorado Springs, going to college, or whatever you do in life. You're going to discover more of who you are in the process, and that's really critical.
And I would say, be mindful, and this takes a little time sometimes, but it's a good tool for reflection. When you're endeavoring something new, whether it's a business or a job or a relationship, it doesn't hurt to occasionally just pause and look back and say, is this thing making me a better person? Or the opposite? Is this thing making me angrier? Is it making me more stressed? Is it making me, and that's going to happen in any endeavor, but overall, is this thing putting me on a trajectory to actually making me more who I am, bringing me more life, bringing me more alive, making me, for lack of a better word, a better person? And I think that's a great question to ask. And I know that my partnership with Yemi has made me a better person. I know that these businesses and working hard on them has made me a better person. Figuring out how to survive this pandemic with these businesses is making me a better person. And I think that's a deeper gift that just drives deeper and transcends businesses and all those, brick and mortar and all of that. But there's a lot more depth to business ownership than just a spreadsheet that works and making money.
That's good, Russ. No, I was just going to say that's good, Russ. I like it.
I mean, it's beautiful. It encapsulates the spirit of entrepreneurship. It's about, you had a dream, you had an idea, you want to support the community, you want to bring neighbors together, you want to provide a space. But additionally, is it good for your soul? Is it good for who you are? Is it helping you be a better person? In your cases, clearly it is. The two of you are so inspiring. We are so grateful that you shared your time with us today. Grateful that you shared your time with these students. Would love to share with the students that if you want to start building your business plan, you can do that at jamyway.org. You can actually take some of this information that Russ and Yemi have shared with you. You can build on that, and you can actually create your own business plan at jamyway.org. And there are plenty of resources there as well to help you to get started and see if this might be something that inspires you. Well, for both of you, congratulations again on being Spirit of Entrepreneurship Award laureates. We are grateful for all you do for our community, and we're grateful for your time and your volunteer service today with these students. So thanks for sharing your story with us, and we look forward to seeing you at all the houses, at the Goose, at the neighbor's house, at all the public houses and the public spaces that you create. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So good to see your faces. Hang in there in these times.